BenderForce.com.
Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is Marvel's latest installment and also stars Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, Vin Diesel, and Bradley Cooper in this new high-octane superhero film. Guys, I want to start by talking about Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2's amazing visual effects. And it's very rare nowadays to see a film where you can say, wow, this movie had such great visual effects, since almost every movie that Hollywood is producing nowadays has stunning visual effects. Almost every film is trying to beat the other just by creating something amazing in special effects. And the last time that I believe I said a film has amazing special effects is the Jungle Book remake that came out recently. And that film was produced entirely in a Hollywood studio, and the film looks stunning because everything looks like a complete jungle. And Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, I'm pleased is to say, another film which has wowed me by its stellar special effects and VFX work. In fact, this film had such good VFX work that I would suggest, my suggestion doesn't mean much, but I would suggest the Academy to look into this film to being a VFX nomination for the upcoming Oscars. That's how good I felt that the special effects were in this film. So let's talk about some of the special effects right now. The way that this film goes is that it creates a bit of a universe of its own. And that already shows the confidence with which this movie is coming. Very few films want to create their own universe, especially superhero films, because they know once you created your own universe, you're basically calling for a franchise. And Guardians of the Galaxy, as you may know, is part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. But Guardians of the Galaxy has its own little universe of its own, where we get to see all these different planets and galaxies, etc. Sort of like Star Wars or Star Trek almost, except with the Guardians. And one of the things that James Gunn has learned to do so well is to envelop his audience into that universe. A universe that has nothing to do with nostalgia the way that Star Wars now does, or Star Trek films now do, and instead envelop you in a totally new and different universe. And the way in which James Gunn does this is by creating a universe through amazing VFX. I had the privilege of seeing this movie in IMAX 3D, which means that you get to see 26% more of what you would get to see in a standard theater. And that's how I recommend you go see the film as well. But basically, you get to see more of the film. But either way, it doesn't matter which format you go see it in, you will be stunned by the visual effects in this film because of how real the spaceships and the planets and everything in this outer space galaxy that Gunn has created looks. And it doesn't just stop there. In fact, it keeps on going to even the characters in this film. Two of the Guardians in this film, Rocket and Groot, are also done by VFX work, and they look amazing in this film. And they look believable. Despite being basically almost cartoon characters, they looked real, they looked believable. I could see and feel the texture. It was like you can grab out and you put your hand out in the theater and you felt like you could feel the fur of Rocket. And this isn't something new, but just the fact that this kind of innovation is still being used in superhero films, and in a film like Guardians, was really refreshing to see. And I encourage James Gunn to keep using this amazing VFX that he set up in future installments of Guardians, and you know they're coming. Another thing that James Gunn does well in this film, other than use VFX to his advantage, is create engaging and exhilarating action sequences. And Marvel is not new to creating exhilarating or engaging action sequences. In fact, the last Marvel movie I saw, Logan, had some very visceral action scenes. And although this PG-13 movie does not reach that level of viscerality, if that's a word, it doesn't get quite to that level, but the action scenes are still quite engaging. The way in which they're filmed and the way that the action is choreographed. There's particularly one prison break scene that I'm not going to spoil that is really stellar in this film, in the way that in which it's choreographed and the way in which it's done, and it makes sense and it looks awesome. So on that front, the film really delivers. On a superhero front, it does provide those action scenes that are necessary to build up a film like this and build up more entries in a franchise where audiences are interested in seeing more scenes like that with the characters that they already love. Speaking of characters, if you've seen the first Guardians of the Galaxy, you know about some of the characters in this film. the major guardians in this film. And the development that you see in these characters in this film and the realizations that which they come to is really good. And it's very rare to go see a character develop from one film to another. And I think Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 does that almost well, but some of that seems like shoehorned exposition, which really bogged this film down for me. It almost was good how the development was going, but sometimes it just began to feel like everything was right on the nose, and it didn't feel like you were able to imply anything out of this film. Some might argue that, as a superhero movie, it doesn't really matter if it's on the nose, it's kind of the point. But I've seen really good movies that are superhero movies, such as, and I'm a big advocate for it, Captain America Civil War, which were able to put those messages in through implications without being quite on the nose, the way that Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 was. Despite these shortcomings, Guardians of the Galaxy still has very memorable characters, and part of that is due to the source material and part of it is due to the way the director James Gunn decides to present those characters. And the actors have done a great job once again to create a little bit of a chemistry between all the different actors and different Guardians. The film is written so that each character gets a little bit of something to share with another character, and that's something that I really appreciate about Marvel and Guardians and Marvel in general, actually, that they are able to give each character time with the other characters and it never feels forced. And that's something the Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 does a great job of pulling off. However, not everything is perfect. Despite charismatic characters and mostly good acting, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 does fall short in the writing of its plot. And sometimes the film feels like it's going back and forth from place to place, and that really brings a screeching halt to the great things about this movie, and the pacing is just all over the place. The movie is in general fast-paced, but unfortunately, since there are so many places that our characters are put and so many different locations that the director has to cover, the movie just jumps back and forth from those places, and it feels like you are seeing snippets of films, little short films, and sometimes even comedy sketches because of the amount of comedy that is put into this film. And that brings me into another point, the comedy in this film. To be very honest, this film has much more comedy than the first one did. So Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 does have more laughs than Guardians of the Galaxy did. And unfortunately for this film, however, the comedy is so tightly, densely packed that it's had to be put in places where there's something dramatic or serious going on. And after a while, it becomes hard as an audience member to understand where to laugh and where to be sad and where to be serious. And what the first film did so well is that it integrated comedy really well into a well-rounded story. Meanwhile, this film already, which is going back and forth place to place with more shoehorned comedy, really comes off flat sometimes. I think that the comedy in this film is good. I laughed at almost every single joke, but the way in which it's placed in the film doesn't always work. And so that's something that also brings some negative criticism for me towards this film, is that even though the jokes are funny, they're not always put in the right place, and that kind of confuses me as an audience member where the director wants the laughs to be. And that's something that I think the James Gunn should work on in the next film, is making sure that he integrates comedy well instead of just milking a joke just to get more laughs, because after all, story comes before anything else. In general though, guys, Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is a harmless, good fun time at the theater. It has good VFX, good special effects, good characters, sort of a good lesson towards the end. You see some character development and some good laughs, even though they're not integrated that well. They are funny, and the characters look good, they look cute, Baby Groot is awesome. And overall, I think Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 is an A- for me. Not the way that Guardians of the Galaxy #1 was, which I enjoyed so much with the confidence that it brought and everything. This film just brings its story down a little bit just because of how it's paced and a little bit of how the comedy is put into this film. And so those are some of the things, some of the quips that I had with Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2. But overall, a pretty good film. I'd suggest seeing it in IMAX 3D if you have the funds to do so. because the VFX of this movie are seriously out of this world, guys. Thank you for watching, guys. Hope you enjoyed this review. I will have more reviews and videos coming out for you very soon. Be sure to see Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 in theaters. It's a pretty fun time. And stay tuned for more videos, guys.